Now, us humans have been able to create structures that pretty much no other animal in the animal kingdom has been able to create. But we aren't the only ones that create structures. Even though we build cities and other incredible things, there are other animals in the animal kingdom that might do it almost as good as we do.
Beavers are, of course, famous for making dams, but a lot of people don't realize how many functions this dam really serves. You see, beavers are essentially ecosystem engineers and are vital to many ecosystems, creating ponds that are habitats for many fish, for example, but it also serves as the beaver's defense mechanism. You see, before a beaver's dam is finished, they are pretty much defenseless against most predators. But once it is finished, then if they detect some kind of threat when they're foraging on land, if they see a wolf, coyote, bear, something like that, then they will escape into their pond, to their dams, where they are safe. It is these dams are usually very stable and very large structures that not even many bears can tear through. Now, of course, these dams are made of wood, branches, logs, all that sort of stuff, but they are also made up of mud and small rocks to patch up some of the holes, so none of it really leaks. And if it does, then the first thing beavers do is essentially plug the hole, because the dams they build are vital to them. Now, in the wintertime, when the top of their pond freezes over, the beavers will have probably stored a lot of vegetation and food underwater in their pond, so they don't have to go outside in the freezing temperatures to find food. They essentially just swim out of their dam in their pond and get some food from time to time, and pretty much spend the rest of their time in their dams, which are pretty warm even in wintertime. Now, beavers are an extremely interesting species. You can destroy their dam 100 times and they will rebuild it 100 times. Their dams are vital to their survival, and it is so fascinating that a species evolved specifically for this function, essentially, to build dams. In fact, they are so evolved for this that they have something called beaver OCD, essentially, which just means that if they hear the sound of running water, then they have to build a dam to stop that sound. In fact, scientists have done some experiments where they brought out a speaker to the middle of the forest and ran sounds of running water, and the beavers just built and built and built around the speaker until the dam was so thick that you couldn't hear the noise anymore. So yeah, but anyways, let's move on to our next animal, which builds in the name of love. Now, birds are extremely unique when it comes to mating. They have an infinite amount of dances, rituals, and everything in between. In Indonesia, the birds of paradise offer some of the greatest spectacles that nature has to offer, and that is all done in the name of reproduction. But there is another class of birds called the weaver birds that build nests in order to find mates. Now, it is usually the male that builds the nests, of course, and the most complex ones are the ones that are built by species living in Africa, where a single bird can make a nest that can house hundreds of birds. They need to work day and night, pay attention to every single little piece of grass that they weave into their nest, every little rock that they stuff in there, every splash of mud that they use to reinforce it. And they can do this for weeks and weeks and weeks, all in the name of attracting a mate. In Australia, Africa, and South America live the mound-building termites. These mounds can be up to 10 meters tall. The craziest thing about these mounds is that they have ventilation systems, meaning that these termites can cool down or warm up the entire mound based on tunnels that are open or closed. These mounds have hundreds of thousands of tunnels, and there are 3 levels to most mounds: the subterranean part underground, the the part that is on ground level, and the arboreal part, which is above ground level. Now, these mounds are made up of a clay-like substance that I believe the termites eat and then excrete from their bodies to make them harder, and once this clay-like material dries, it can be as hard as concrete. Now, these mounds exist in dry environments: savannas, deserts, the pampas of South America, the outback of Australia. But in the wetter environments, termites make carton nests, and these nests are usually located on trees. And while it is made up of a less durable material overall, what it is more resilient to is water. It is very resilient to water, and it makes it the perfect type of nest for wetlands, riverside nests, tropical environments, those kind of things. Now, it is very crazy to think about the fact that these termite mounds can be as large as some houses, or as tall as some houses, and they are built by some of the most fragile little insects in the world, and yet they make probably the most resilient structures in nature. In one of the most dense and varied ecosystems in the world lives possibly the most fascinating species of ants, the leafcutter ants, who are some of the only animals besides humans to have actually discovered agriculture. They build giant underground nests, and a lot of their nest is used to cultivate a certain fungus that they eat. They collect leaves, hence their name, take it to their nest, and use it as a substrate for the fungus to grow. These underground chambers are so advanced that the temperature and humidity of these chambers can be changed to meet the needs of the fungus. They clean this fungus and take care of it extremely well, as it is a source of food for them sometimes, but they also work with little insects called aphids, which also eat this fungus, but they also produce a certain honeydew after they eat this fungus, which the ants use to feed their larvae and themselves. Now, I talked about this in my previous video, and if you want to check that video out, then check it out after this one. Please don't leave yet, okay? I still have one more very fascinating animal to cover, and if you want more content like this, then consider liking, subscribing, all that fun stuff. But I'll remind you again at the end of the video, and if you didn't enjoy, then don't subscribe, okay? You don't have to if you didn't. But anyways, let's move on to the last animal. Around 70% of our planet is covered in water, most of that water being ocean. And this ocean provides a habitat for so much marine life. And yet, a habitat that covers less than 1% of the ocean's surface houses over 1/4 of all marine life. I'm talking, of course, about coral reefs. Reefs are created by an extremely small animal called coral polyps, which extract a calcium carbonate from the seawater and use it to make a hard protective shell for themselves. But when a lot of coral polyps get together, that's when the real magic happens. Over thousands of years, these coral polyps, no bigger than a grain of rice, form some of the greatest ecosystems in the world. Now, they don't do this alone. You see, they need a certain type of algae to make the process work. Now, these coral polyps get a lot of their energy from these algae that they share their systems with. Now, the algae gets its energy from photosynthesis, sunlight, which it shares with the coral polyp, and it makes up the coral polyp's a very big source of energy. So it can't really exist without the algae, and in exchange, the coral polyp gives it protection and a place where the algae can access sunlight. This is why corals form near shores and shallower waters, because the algae needs sunlight. Now, this is also what gives corals their very beautiful colors. However, coral reefs are unfortunately under threat. Warmer climates kills the algae inside these coral polyps, which eventually kills the polyps themselves, which also devastates a lot of marine life. Now, scientists are figuring out ways to grow coral reefs, and it can possibly be used to restore some areas that have been damaged. But we still have a long way to go. Now, it is fascinating that this little animal creates the most biodiverse ecosystem in the entire ocean. I think it is super fascinating, and they are to be respected and cherished, because I've had the fortune of going to a coral reef in Mexico a few years back, and it was one of the greatest experiences of my life. The thought of losing these reefs forever is a devastating thought. But anyways, if you want other videos like this, like, subscribe, all that stuff that I said earlier. But also, I hope you learned something today, and have a lovely day. Goodbye.